everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of Chit Chat English Podcast. Today I'm super stoked because, guess what? I've got two very cool guys and guests, by the way, Saeedjan and also Farshad. So before we get a start, I would like them to just have a quick and laconic introduction about themselves, and after that we get into our topic.
Hey. Hi guys, this is Saeed. I'm a BA graduate of English translation and MA graduate of English teaching. That's all.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And my name is Amir Farshad Shirzai, and I got graduated from the university here in Sistan and Balochistan in English literature, and I'm going to pursue my education in MA for English literature as well.
Oh, thank you so much, guys, for accepting my invitation. By the way, it's a great honor and privilege to be in your companionship, by the way. So before we get to our topic, I would like to give a kind of insight to our followers about the topic that we're going to talk about, which is a kind of a nightmare for most English learners.
A mystery, actually. It is a mystery.
Exactly, could be. And most of them are like, they just consider it as a kind of quixotic plan and kind of a pipe dream that they will never may achieve it. And they're just, in spite of studying very hard and hard working, and they reach actually and they achieve no result for a long time, for many years. And this could be a kind of huge obstacle for most English learners.
Which is fluency.
Which is fluency, exactly. Yes, we're going to talk about fluency, and we're going to dig in what cause and what somehow we talk about what obstacles hinder students in order to impel to go through this actually very important skill, by the way. So we're going to actually dive into the first question, which is about fluency. We're going to define it. It's very important to define the fluency, and in both scientific way and also in other casual or the way informal way. And what's your 2 cents about fluency, guys? How do you define it?
Talking academically, there are 2 senses of fluency. First, we have the overall proficiency of a person who is learning a foreign language, which includes the 4 main skills of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. But the popular belief, when we're talking the fluency, what pops up in somebody's mind is actually the oral fluency. So the oral fluency is to talk expressively, smoothly, in a flowing way without much hesitation and stops, with the correct and appropriate intonation, rhythm, pronunciation, and everything. That's basically the basic premise behind the fluency.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with that. So when we're talking about fluency, we're actually considering the flow of the rhythm and the talking. When you're conversing with someone, and if you do it in a very proficient and efficient way without any hesitation or any pause, or that you do it in a way that makes them feel like you're being natural in a sense, and you're not doing a lot of thinking, and there's no translation process in the middle of it, or at least it is there, but it's so quick that you're just not going to notice any pause or hesitation in between. So yeah, I would consider that fluency as well. But there are other factors definitely to it, but I think going along with that definition makes the best sense.
Mm-hmm. So talking without hesitation.
And without, just as Farshad mentioned, without any translation, or at least with the minimum amount of translation. Because, when you're fluent enough, when you're efficient enough in English, your brain is somehow worked out to render thought in English primarily, instead of your mother tongue. For example, you have the thought, okay, that thought needs to be rendered, needs to be somehow materialized in form of speech. And your brain functions and your brain gets that form of English. English comes first, okay, when you're talking or when you're trying to express something. And then, just as Farshad mentioned, there's just very little amount of translation involved.
So what about the speed? Does it include to
well,
be
yeah.
fluent or not?
If you're gonna talk in a fluent way, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're speedy, because being speedy doesn't contribute anything to being fluent. It's just your own preference or the way that you talk personally. But I would have to say that there is a certain flow of English speech that you're gonna have to at least talk at that level if you're going to be considered fluent. Well, it doesn't mean that you need to go like, everyone, what are you doing? This is a very good. No, that doesn't mean you're fluent. But being fluent means that you're talking again without that pause or that hesitation, or you're at least familiar with all of the language items that you're going to face, because that's the thing. You don't want to have the process of translation in between, because if that occurs, you're gonna pause and be like, okay, what was that word that I read that other day that I'm going to use right now? Or what does this mean in English? No, that process needs to be eliminated. And how do you eliminate it? I think the best way is to become at least familiar with all of the language or linguistic items that you're going to face when when you're engaging in a conversation with someone. So when someone's talking to you, you need to understand whatever that person is meaning, right? Whatever that person's intention of meaning is being projected at you, without any in the context, of course, without any hesitation or pause, right? So that's the thing.
And in case of conveying your message, so it happens, for example, there are some, by the way, speakers, they talk, but they are not very good at conveying their message. It's you know, the listener, they're not actually, they get confused or they misunderstand, by the way, because the speaker is not able to convey his or her message in a clear and correct way.
Yes,
it also
that is another matter. But in light of what Farshad said and what you just brought up as speed, there's a norm actually for each language, okay? But there's also another factor that some people in their own language, they talk fast, okay? They just talk fast, okay? That's normal for them. But some people, you see that normally and naturally they're more reserved and they're more low profile. They speak in a less speedy way. It doesn't, as Farshad said, necessarily mean that when you're talking rapidly, it means that you're fluent. No, it could be up to a certain point, but then if you're talking expressively and if you're talking in a way that that is understandable to your audience, and there is a natural flow and melody to your speech, that means yes, you're fluent. Okay, but you said that some people they speak and the listener gets confused. Or well, there may be lots of reasons for that.
So we can somehow add it to fluency factors, that if he or she is not able to convey his or her message, so she's not fluent.
I don't think that's what occurs when we're talking about that. So it doesn't mean that you're not fluent. It means that there's a paucity of vocabulary proficiency right there, because when you're trying to convey something that you have in mind and your intention is to allow the listener to understand what you're saying, that you could say that in a very good way but not be fluent. Or you could say that in a terrible way, but be fluent. It doesn't mean that, okay, so fluency is oral only, right? When we're talking in this context right now that we're talking, okay, there's fluency in other aspects of language as well. But right here, when we're talking about fluency, we mean that you talk in a good flow without any pause or having to hesitate, okay? That's it.
That's it.
If you are conveying what you mean,
it doesn't relate to the meaning part.
no, it's if there's
To that part.
inconsistency, if there's inconsistency in your meaning, right,
Sure.
or in the way that you convey what you want to say, that's on you. But that isn't related to fluency, in my opinion, at least.
What's your idea in this case?
Well, there may be lots of other factors. For example, you're fluent enough, okay? You speak in a natural way, but you do not, you're not efficient person in using certain vocabulary, for example, in different contexts. For example, you use synonyms, okay? Synonyms are not always synonymous. Words are
You're
not
right,
always
yes.
synonymous, yes. And you may be out of the context. You're speedy enough, but you're out of the context. You're not in the field to express yourself. You're using the wrong words. You may be grammatically incorrect, or you're just talking. I don't know.
Nonsensical.
Nonsense.
Hey, you're talking. You could talk nonsense all you want.
yeah.
I could talk nonsense for 17 hours and be fluent at it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a good speaker. See, that's where we distinguish the thing between, accuracy and fluency.
Got it.
That's
So we can add that part. The way the ability to convey your message to accuracy part.
right.
Expressively, I think it would be a more correct term.
Correct term.
Yeah, well, apart from accuracy, yes,
Good.
being expressiveness is also an important factor when we're talking with fluency.
Good. And let's just talk about the factors of being fluent. What are the factors of being fluent? What are the factors of fluency? Can we just talk about some?
Well, there are
factors
lots of reasons and factors behind having a good fluency. The main one is affective domain, actually, which involves your emotions. Obviously, when you're shy, when you're by nature a shy person, you cannot be fluent. Okay, in an unfamiliar environment, or if you're feeling negative, or if you're not confident enough, okay, you cannot talk in a fluent way. So I think the first thing that comes to my mind to be a fluent speaker is to be able to handle different situations emotionally, with confidence, with power. The
Right.
first one. Yes.
So yeah, I think those are good points right there. So what do you need to do in order to be fluent, right? What contributes? What factors do we have? Well, first of all, you need to have a very good grasp of the language that you're going to use. You need to know the ins and outs of it. And aside from that, you need to speak. Yeah, that's the key term there. You need to speak. What does that mean? Well, it sounds simple enough, right? You need to speak in order to be fluent. Everyone knows that. But do people actually do that? Not a lot of times. So what the thing is, most learners confine themselves to classroom activities. They don't engage in anything outside of the classroom. What needs to happen here is that you need to engage in every opportunity that knocks on your door, right? Because imagine there's a discussion class. You go to the discussion session and you're just sitting there observing, right? A listener, a mere listener. You're nothing more. That doesn't help you in being fluent. Speaking helps you in being fluent. Because when you speak, you understand the way that you're using language. Because sometimes there's this instance that in your mind you have a very good idea of what you're going to say, but when you're actually saying it and putting it out there, it's a messed up version of it.
Exactly.
What happens there? I think the thing that happens there is because you don't have the proper verbal facilities to utter these speeches that you want to do, because there hasn't been a good link or connection between your brain and your tongue, right? So now when you're talking, you can't translate your ideas into speech. That's a little difficult for you because you haven't done it before. I think that's one of the first keys and steps to doing whatever needs to be done in order to be fluent.
Just talk.
Yeah, you just need to talk.
Yes.
Expose yourself, surround yourself the speakers.
Yeah.
Not the speakers, but talking as well.
Talking as well.
Engaging yourself in
Listen,
discussion.
when you're talking and then you go home and you reflect on your own conversations, you're going to understand that it'll say, well, I could have used that other expression that I learned the other day there, but I didn't. Why didn't I do that? Is my memory bad? No, probably not. It's because you haven't gotten familiar with that expression as of yet. And you need to practice that. You need to even talk to your own self, right? Record your voice. Do that, yeah. And when you repeat it and when you listen to it again from an outside perspective, right? Now you're third person listening to your own voice. What happens then is you can criticize yourself. And when you criticize yourself properly, you can, that leads up to,
Definitely.
I think, massive improvements in your...
And as Farshad mentioned, there's the power of imagination, you know, that really works. I've personally actually experienced that. Vision, I'm talking about the vision, as Farshad said. So in your mind, you have, oh, there's someone else. He's talking in a very fluent, accurate way, but in reality, it's something different.
Reality is different.
It's something really different. You know, in order to actually to have that, to just to put it in reality, I mean, that imaginary situation, you need to practice, you know, to just in both in your mind and in reality, as you said. So recording yourself and just talking in the mirror and just talking with yourself, it could do the trick.
Yes, but I think we shouldn't ignore the fact that when we're talking about fluency or learning a new language, there is this premise of input and output. Okay, input is the amount of information and how much you're exposed to that language. Okay, is your environment filled with, for example, English materials? Are you exposed enough? If you're living in another country, that's great. Okay. If you're living in a country whose people are talking in the target language, that's great. But most people who are learning another language, okay, they're not in that country, okay? So they need to surround themselves. They need to actually delve deeply into that environment by, I don't know, by listening to music, by watching films, I don't know, even by playing video games, which contains lots of dialogues and everything else. This is a kind of peripheral learning. It's a kind of indirect learning, okay? So I think input and output goes hand in hand, okay? So there's enough input, so you're a passive receiver of input, but at certain levels, you need to be active as well. I mean, you need to produce language, okay? You need to actually, you know, what you have learned. If there's a certain grammar point, if there are a lot, if it is a word, an expression, an idiom, I think you should consciously think that today, okay, I'm going to, or my next sentence is going to include that one. Or if I'm going to write a composition, I'm going to read, you know, I'm going to include that as well, okay? There is this phenomenon among, I've noticed among those people who are really advanced, but there is a certain avoidance of using specific structures and vocabulary because they're a little bit, you know, challenging, okay? Sometimes you have
there's
to...
a fear.
No, there's not the fear. There is this challenge. It may come from the structure itself, okay? Or the word may be a little mouthful, okay? So you need to practice and you need to consciously think that, okay, I'm going to use this structure right now, even if that's going to decrease my level of fluency. You need to wrestle sometimes with language, you know. I'm sure you have all experienced that sometimes there is this, you know, challenging.
There's something holding you back.
There's something that gets to you. And for example, sometimes when you want to use a complex grammatical structure, okay, because of its complexity, you avoid that, okay. I was going to say that I've seen lots of people who are really good at speaking, but they avoid using certain structure and words, even despite the fact that they have, I don't know, they have mastered and they have studied lots of things related to language, but they're always in their passive repertoire of language. It doesn't come to the surface to be used. If it does come to the surface, then that you have somehow petted that thing, and that is your baby, and now you have control over that. So my suggestion, or as I suggest, or my experience is that the more you use that word or that grammatical structure or everything, the more it gets much more easier the next time that you're going to use it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, anything else on this point?
Yeah.
If we talk about the fluency factors, I think there could be plethora of factors that we can do along them. So
I think one important one that we somehow, I don't think we neglect that, but we just suppose that it's right there. Well, it's motivation, passion, right? You're gonna need that.
Sure.
You're gonna need that a lot, because if you're going to engage in activities outside of the classroom, you have to want that. How do you want that? Maybe there's an end goal. Maybe you want to become fluent. Maybe you don't want to become fluent. If you don't want to become fluent, there's no point in doing any of that, because if you don't want something, you're not going to go get it. And this requires a lot of practice.
Exactly.
It does. You're going to have to spend lots of hours on analyzing your own level and taking in more expressions, collocations, more vocabulary, putting them into practice
consciously.
Yes, consciously. And if you do that consciously, after a while, it becomes unconscious. You're going to use it quite actively and in a proficient and very good way. And you're not going to even realize it. You're going to look back and say, wow, I used that expression. That was magnificent. I never thought I would be using such a complex structure. But what you're going to need prior to all of this is the motivation, and actually having that in your mind that you want to become better at this. Because if you don't, you're probably not going to practice enough. And if you don't practice enough, you're not going to get there unless you're some sort of a genius, which quite frankly, most of us are not. And language is a phenomenon that you can't. It's not a given, right? Yeah, you don't look at a chair and say, okay, this is chair. In my mind, there's like a signifier and a signified, in a sense that when I look at like something like a phone, the word phone or the word mobile is not going to come to my mind. Or in another language, it's going to be a whole different word. Exactly. And you're going to have to learn that. It's not something that comes to you. It's not 2 plus 2. It's not that. Language is not 2 plus 2. You're going to have to learn and going to have to see and maybe tackle everything before you want to be completely familiar with it, and you're going to use it properly. So you're going to need a lot of passion and motivation for that, and it's a very rewarding process. I think you guys know it already because you've been in this for quite a long time. When you learn something new and you use it positively, you're somehow exhilarated. You feel a lot of passion. You feel rewarded, as if you have achieved something. So there's a release of dopamine in your mind. I think you're going to need that before engaging in any of the things that we just mentioned.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think the next question would be the same, but why the learners fail to get fluent? What's the reason? So we talked a little bit about some actually.
What we've been talking so far is related to the learner himself or herself. Okay, but let's not put everything on the learner.
Exactly.
Okay.
It goes both ways.
Yeah, both ways.
Sometimes, for example, when you're attending sessions, you're going to institutions, you're putting lots of time, you're allocating your life to it, but there's no result. Why? I've noticed that, okay, I've been teaching and I've seen my colleagues, and I'm not saying that I'm a perfect teacher or anything, but I've noticed that sometimes this lack of fluency among language learners stems from the class itself, and from the lack of the efficiency of the teacher. Okay, there's a good teacher, fluent enough, good pronunciation, native like, everything, wow, okay, but the person has also passed TTC and all those stuff, but again, you don't see somebody who's learned from him or her, okay. This is something that is related to the environment of the class, and being a teacher, I think is really difficult, because apart from the fact that you have to consider the psychology of every student in your class, you should know when and what to use, what kind of tasks, what kind of practices you should include in your classroom. And not all of them always contribute to your teaching. Sometimes, for example, your students are fluent enough, but there is no accuracy, or they're accurate, but there's no fluency. So you have to think, and you have to keep a balance in the class. And I've seen that there are some obvious activities that are related for fluency, like information gap or simulation roles and all those stuff. But I see that all the classes, most of the classes actually, are teacher-centered. And the teacher talks blah 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 in English for a long period of time, and just for 5 minutes each student is giving a limited amount of time, not to talk, but just to, for example, fill in a blank, just to give an answer which is thought before. There is the student is not giving enough time to think, to actually organize his thoughts and then produce something. Okay, so let's not, as I mentioned, let's not just blame everything. Let's just
teachers are going to say are to blame,
yeah.
somehow. But as I talked about also we do have the different learning styles of students. So teachers need to consider different actually style of learning.
And right now we are in the speaking methodologically, right now we're in the postmodern aspect or era of learning language. There is no specific thing to say that, okay, in this class you have to use grammar based, in that class you have to use audiolingualist, blah blah blah. Actually right now there is an amalgamation. There's a mixture, there's a combination of different methods that you have to use when suited, okay? And sometimes you have to get that chunk of speech or language out of that person, no matter how difficult it may be. Okay, so this is, I think, a very significant problem that we're facing right now, that people are really disappointed with institutions.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, and that they don't learn, and that, okay, speaking fluently is a mystery. There's a certain mysticism surrounding somebody who speaks another language. Wow, this guy is a genius. No, if you take the process, if you go in the direct way, if you follow those natural steps, okay, in an accurate way with good guidance, you're going to be a fluent English speaker, okay? No matter how stupid you are or how genius you are. It's just a process, I think, okay? Just a process that you need to know the steps with good guidance, with a good teacher, to be self-confident, to have the internal and external motivation, and then go forward. Then language fluency and proficiency occurs naturally.
As you said, just a stupid person can
pick
up a language.
I believe there is no stupid person in the world. Okay,
just we consider a kind of a stupid person, but he or she can actually pick up a language like as a child.
Yes,
He's
exactly.
Just a child, he or she just by the process of learning.
No,
by the way, just
to be
pick up the
using
language
actually that
without
word
any-
which I use, stupid, I think
No.
that wasn't really good. That wasn't appropriate
I
to
see,
say
yeah,
it,
you're
because
right. But-
no one is really
No,
stupid.
no. In
Go
terms
through
of
the-
language, no, really.
Some
Go
people
through
are
the
complex
process.
learners.
Yeah.
Right, let's call them
Exactly.
complex
Complex,
learners.
yes.
They don't get it the straight way or the normal way that everyone's been instructing their whole life.
Yeah.
So you can inculcate them in different ways, perhaps, or they can inculcate themselves in different ways. But I think another one contributing factor to
Fail.
to the failure of
Failure of-
getting fluent is patience. No,
Exactly.
a lot of
Impatient, yes.
a lot of learners I see are so impatient.
3 months.
Advertisement.
3 months, 2
Exactly,
months, just
3 months to get
make a
fluent.
miracle to-
Like put on songs, go to sleep, wake up fluent. That is
that's really
that is
ridiculous.
such a ridiculous and utterly audacious
Absurd.
absurd. It's absurd. It's so absurd that I can stress it enough. So the thing is, everyone expects to learn something given a definite time. Right?
Exactly.
You
Different
can't really put a time stamp on learning a language. You can't say, okay, 2 years, you'll be good. It doesn't work like that. Even learners that have studied English for 30 plus years, they still struggle in some areas of it. And that's completely normal because this isn't something that you can be the master of. There's like, what, 170,000 words in English. Can you learn all of them? Do you have to learn all of them? Of course not. You're only going to need like 30,000, 40,000 at best. But the thing that is very common among the learners nowadays is that everyone's impatient. Everyone wants to get things done quickly. Yeah. They don't consider that they have so much time. They don't do that. Like I had a student back in the day. She was 50 years old, and right now, after like 4 years, she has learned English at a very acceptable and good way.
After 4 years.
After 4 years.
She's considered as
Right,
patient.
yeah, she was
worker.
patient.
Patient.
She
Yeah.
worked. If I gave her tasks, she worked on them. She did them properly. She engaged in a lot of outside classroom activities. You're gonna need to have to do that. You can't just.
It doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight.
Exactly.
As I say, you can't put a time stamp on it. It doesn't happen in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. You're gonna have to maybe work with this for a very long time if you want to get quite proficient at it. But a certain level that's accepted. For example, you want to get an IELTS score of 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
That's generally an accepted score. So if you want to get there, that's great. You can do that, and you won't need that much time for it. But if you want to get a 9 at it, you're gonna have to try a hell lot more.
Exactly. Good. Thank you so much.
I think the last part.
The last part. Yeah, let's move on to the last part about actually your experiences, guys. Let's see what have you gone through this journey. I mean, just in order to be actually. So why you are in this level of fluency or?
Well, I don't consider myself a good speaker or a good somebody who's learned the target language well. But for me, I think I have attended those English institutions just for 2 semesters.
2 semesters.
Yeah, when I was in high school. And then I somehow learned that by self-studying. I played lots of video games, really, and sometimes I had to open the dictionary and get, see the meaning of, in order to, for example, solve a certain puzzle in that game. And I was really exposed to that. And I used to listen to lots of songs and see a lot of movies. And then when I entered the university, that was where I was really serious. Serious, by serious, I mean that I wanted to improve. Before that, it was just a hobby.
Just a hobby.
Yeah, just a hobby, just something fun, okay, to sometimes. But then I remember having a book on Fridays or in the family where everyone is having a good time or they're making barbecue, I remember that I was studying. Yeah, and that really worked for me. And also that motivation that Farshad mentioned, that this internal motivation that I had actually helped me a lot in the process of learning the other language. And when I entered the university, okay, I was exposed a lot. There were lots of tasks and assignments that I had to do, but I wasn't feeling pressure that I had to do it. No, I really loved English, and my familiarity and my relationship with English was really based on mutual love.
Exactly.
That gave me the ambition to go further and further. I think that worked for me.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. I think passion is key right
Passion
there.
is
Right.
it, yeah.
So for me, I think this level of, well, I think my English flourished as I got more interested in it. So English for me has always been something that I loved. I loved it, really. Like when I sit down and talk, I actually think that it's one of my passions to have a conversation with someone in English, and in order to handle myself in that situation. So a lot of people might consider the level that like we speak pretty high, but at the same time, I think for me, at least personally, there's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of room for
Exactly.
improvement
Sure.
for everyone. I still fail a lot of times to
Yeah.
do certain things, and I notice that. That's the thing. That's like I realize my mistakes and I work on them to improve them. So for me, I started studying English when I was in 3rd grade of primary school, but I went to some institutions for like, again, as I said, for about like 3 or 4.
We experienced
We went to the same institute together, and I think at the time, if you remember, I wasn't really that good.
Exactly. That
right?
time, no.
No one was good. We just learned. We just
wasting
went
the time,
ahead.
I could say.
Yeah,
but
somehow you could call it a waste of time,
unfortunately,
but it wasn't actually a waste of time. Some things happen
that was
unconsciously. Like when you're playing video games, I used to play a lot of video games. I didn't watch that many movies, but video games did it for me because I needed to understand the objective, and in order to understand the objective, I needed to understand what was written. And you go through that, you listen to a lot of people with different accents, and what was one of my passions was, of course, accents, and I really wanted to get good at it, learn a lot of them. And passion speaks here for me. But there's also another aspect to it that a lot of people neglect and don't realize, is that you study hard. You study really hard. People don't see that. Like when I tell them, like, yeah, for the past year I've been studying for 13 plus hours a day, they're gonna be like, okay. And they don't know how difficult it was to go through all that process of dealing with all of the material that was somehow intangible in many ways, that a lot of times. But yeah, I think you're gonna have to
sit down and
do
open
it.
the book and
You
just
have to do it.
There's no miracle. There's no
miracle.
shot given to you.
Exactly.
Just sit there, open the book, start studying.
There's no magic pill for it. You don't take a pill, wake up, and you know English. That doesn't happen, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight.
Exactly.
I've been practicing for about, how old am I right now?
At 21, I think.
I'm 21.
About
Yeah, I'm 21. So I've been practicing for about, what, like 10, 12
12
years?
I remember.
Yeah.
You're right.
That's a long
That's
time.
a long time.
Yeah.
As you guys mentioned, so passion, motivation. There should be a need to impel you to
Yeah,
improve
there's going to be a
your
need.
English
Exactly.
as well as the other skills, by the way.
So
that needs some who push you through.
that's the thing. Like when I talk to some teenage students of mine, they're somehow like, parents force them to go to institutes, and they're like they're not very they're not very serious or but as they get older and they realize that, okay, I have this PhD in this field, but if I want to go to another country, if I want to go abroad and study in that perfect luxurious university, I'm going to need to learn English. And if I don't do that, all of the things that I have done would be taken for granted. Do you want to do that? No, of course not. So now you're impelled and you feel this need to go ahead and learn English, and you're going to do it diligently because now you have a goal in your mind, and you're going to always need that goal. If there's no goal, you're just doing it as a hobby, as just like a what do you call it?
Haphazard
Yeah,
learning.
it's like leisure
Learning.
time,
Yeah.
right? If you do it that way, if it gets hard, you're going to quit.
Exactly.
Because
So
you're not
that's-
going to push yourself. No one's going to push themselves when they have no need for it. If I didn't have the need to learn this, or if there wasn't that impelling love that somehow projected me towards this avenue of learning, I would not have gone a step further.
So, John,
Okay.
anything else?
No.
Last word. Oh, thank you so much, guys, for
You're
watching
welcome.
us.
Thanks for having
thank
us.
Thank you, guys, you too,
Of
for
course,
just
anytime.
coming over, by the way. And I hope the guys and the followers made the most of what we talked about today. And until the next video and episode, peace out.
Bye.
Goodbye.